Hey, 2 weeks ago, we started this series called A Theology of the Cross, where we talked about, first week we talked about the betrayal, and then last weekend we talked about the crucifixion, and we wrap up this series today where we're talking about the resurrection, all right? Now, here's one of the things that I've learned. By the way, if you'd be so good to take out your sermon notes and pen from your service guide where you could take notes, or if you're one of those technical people, you can follow along on your phone by using the YouVersion app. But here's one of the things that we notice. Our church is 9 years old. We'll be 10 years old in January. God's blessed us so much. But I noticed over all these years that usually on Easter Sunday, there are one of two different people that are here. First off, you got people that are here that are skeptics. Or maybe you're exploring faith and you're like, you know what, dude, I don't know anything about this Christianity stuff, but man, I'm here because a friend invited me. Or you'd be surprised at the different reasons why people come to this church. One guy told me, he said, I come here because it counts toward my community service. I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I really appreciated the boldness of one guy saying, hey, look, I'm here because I'm dating this chick from Coastal, and my presence here kind of keeps me in the game. And I was like, okay, cool. Whatever brought you here, God bless you for showing up, all right? And so we're really pumped about that. So we've got people that are here, are checking everything out. If that's you, look at me. I want you to know something. We started this church for people just like you, okay? And so we don't have all the answers, but we love everybody, and you're next. And so we have but one word to say to you: welcome. We were all in your chair before, but we also have people in our church who've been serving Jesus for the average number in our church. People have been serving Jesus for like less than 3 years, and so all these people tell me all the time, PC, dude, love what Jesus is doing in my life, and but I don't necessarily tell people about it because I'm afraid I'm going to be asked a question I don't have an answer to. All right, and I get that. All right, and can I let you know, I've had 25 years of extensive theological training, and I still get asked questions about that too, where I'm like, hey, dude, I don't know. Could be God, could not. I don't know. But here's one of the coolest things that you can learn about your walk with Jesus is that when people are asked questions, if you tell them, hey, man, I don't know, but I'm going to ask around, I'm going to ask, you know what, people still respect that. You ain't got to have all the answers, all right? But today, here's what I'm going to do. I want to arm you where you have answers real clarity on the resurrection, okay? Because this is the hinge on which all of Christianity swings, all right? We don't get if Jesus does not rise from the dead, you know what? Game over. That's ball game, baby. All right? There's no reason for us to meet. There's no reason for you to be wearing your pretty pastels. So you all look so nice today. And there's no reason to dye no eggs and hunt them. And then there's no reason to leave here and go and eat pounds and pounds of ham. All right? Have y'all ever found it a little bit ironical that on Easter we celebrate the risen Jewish Messiah that's conquered death, hell, and the grave. And we honored that Jewish Messiah by eating ham. I just always kind of found that kind of fun. But anyway, so today we're going to be talking where you guys leave say, you know what? I don't know what the third horn on the he-goat of Revelation means, but I can tell you one darn thing. I can talk about the resurrection all day, okay? So here's what I want us to do. We're going to be talking about this, and here's where I want us to be able to see. The first piece of evidence, you're going to find all of these points in the book of John, all right? The first piece of evidence, write this down, is this, that Jesus died. Some of you are like, okay, why is that a big point? All right, let me read this to you, all right? John 19:38 says this: later Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Now Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly he feared the Jewish leaders, and with Pilate's permission, he came and he took the body away. Now this guy, Joseph of Arimathea, he was kind of like an undercover lover of Jesus. He was not a zealot, all right? Whenever Jesus was alive, he didn't want everybody to know that he loved Jesus because he just couldn't handle the drama that followed Jesus' disciples and the religious leaders. And he's like, you know what, I'm just going to be in the background here. And what he does is his first public thing. He goes and he gets legal permission to have the body of Jesus, but all of this required the proper paperwork. Some of you are like, what are you talking about? You see, Rome killed Jesus, and this is not a private matter, it's a state matter now. all right? So everything has to be done decently in order for this to happen. Because many times in Jesus' day, when somebody was crucified, the family, the majority of the time, didn't even go in and claim the body, all right? The bodies of people that were crucified were often thrown in the city dump, all right? So some of us would say, okay, all right, now this is starting to make a little bit of sense. But this guy, he wasn't a zealot, all right? If you had somebody that all the time been vocal in public about this, that would kind of take away from the case, all right? This dude, Joseph, steps up and claims the body. By the way, for those of us that are Old Testament scholars, we'll find it interesting that 700 years before Jesus was ever even born, a guy by the name of Isaiah writes that the Messiah would be buried in a rich man's tomb. Follow me around the barn real quick. This is really good. Now watch this. It says in verse 39, he was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who had earlier visited Jesus at night. And Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices and strips of linen. This in accordance to Jewish burial customs. All right, now watch this. So you got the first guy, Joseph, who wasn't no zealot, and he kind of wanted to be in the background. Guess what? His other partner, Nicodemus, was the same way. When he went and saw Jesus at night. He didn't want anybody to know he was a Jesus fan. How many of y'all got friends like that? Be like, me and you were close, but we just don't want anybody else to know. I got ministry friends like that. We do some things that are a little out of the ordinary at church, just in case you hadn't noticed. And every now and then somebody will call me up and say, hey, I was just wondering, man, why y'all do that? And I give that makes sense. Yeah, don't tell nobody I called. I was like, yeah, you're a real dear friend, aren't you? Nobody wants to be public with our friendship. But here's the thing. That dude, Nicodemus, another non-public supporter, he didn't want to suffer, so he came to Jesus at night. He anoints Jesus' body with 75 pounds of spices and then adds another 20 plus pounds of linens and burial cloths, all right? Now, Jesus was mummified. I don't know if anybody has got kids that are like 14 or under. How many of y'all have like kids that are obsessed with like zombies? All right, my little boy was like, Dad, you know there's gonna be a zombie apocalypse one day. I was like, boy, what are you reading? What do you want? And so he asked me one day, Dad, was Jesus a zombie? And I was like, where do you get this? And I was like, no, he wasn't a zombie. But however, he was mummified. His face, his body, his head were covered. And this is important. Why? Because I'm going to give you some alternate theories to the resurrection here. And I'm going to try my best to not be a smart aleck, all right? But I just got to let you know, I don't want to do it, but I have the spiritual gift of sarcasm. So if it comes out, please don't be, it's just who I am, all right? There's these people out there that believe in what's called the swoon theory. The swoon theory says this, that Jesus never died, he just passed out. All right, so here's what they said. So those guys, whenever you have a chance to talk with them, I've gone to them, and I just can't stop, my mouth from running off. I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that Jesus, he had been awake for 36 hours. He'd been beaten by the religious leaders, to a place where he's unrecognizable. He gets flogged. By the way, whenever flog or the scourge, it killed a lot of people, just the scourging alone. But Jesus was a tough son of a gun, and he survived that scourging. All right? And so the next thing that we see, that he's forced to carry a 100-pound railroad tie for over a mile, all right, through, and then all of a sudden, he collapses under the weight of that. You and I would be too. I listened to a lecture one time, and it said whenever Jesus fell with this, with the cross on his back, they said whenever, the best way you and I can understand the blow to him would be us being in a head-on car crash and hitting the steering wheel with our chest with no airbag and no seatbelt. When that happens, you have a major heart contusion. You're in the process of dying. You need a medical examination up to that point. So Jesus, at this point, has endured all this. Then there's a railroad spike nailed in the most sensitive area of his body, which are the hands and the feet. He's crucified. Later on, after he dies, he's speared in the heart. It crushes his heart sac. The guard that did it actually gave testimony that blood and water came out. They're like, yeah, this dude was dead. He'd been dead a while, all right? And he had already been dead, but this made it clear that he was. All of this up to this point has killed everybody in human history. But the proponents of the swoon theory would tell you, by the way, we're not done yet. After that, they put 75 pounds of spices on top of him, putting even more pressure on his body. And then they cover his face, which would have certainly not aided his breathing. And then the proponents of the swoon theory would tell you that after this, in spite of all that after 3 days, Jesus just took a nap. He was strengthened. He hasn't eaten in 3 days. Forget the fact that he's been killed in so many different ways. But then he's strong enough to roll away the stone, to subdue the guard, and walk into town and tell everybody that he conquered death. Brothers and sisters, not to be a smart aleck, but it takes more faith to believe the swoon theory than it does to believe the Bible's story about Jesus' resurrection. I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, that's just kind of stupid, all right? The next piece of evidence that we see is this. Jesus' burial site was well known at the time, all right? John 19:41 says this, at the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden, a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid, because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there, okay? So here's what we got to understand. His burial place was not a secret place. Nothing about the crucifixion of Jesus was covert. It was all public. You got to understand, whenever they did crucifixions, it was during the time when the cities were the most populated. Why? Because they wanted everybody to see an example. Say, don't you be like this dude. You better not behave like him, and you better not believe like him, because the same thing will happen to you. They did this as a scare tactic. All right? Jesus was forced to carry his cross through some prime real estate areas whenever the places are packed. Okay, so women would be shopping, all of a sudden you got this guy whose back is literal hamburger meat. His face is swollen by being beaten. Can you just imagine right now? Every mama was like, man, don't even look at that. Why? Because they want to scare everybody. Everything about Jesus' crucifixion was incredibly public. The third thing that we see is this, that there were eyewitness accounts. We've already named a couple of them. We talked about Joseph and Nicodemus and the guard who stuck Jesus in the heart. And in chapter 20, we see a new one that's introduced, all right? Eyewitnesses are important because later on, why are eyewitnesses so important? Here's another alternate theory, is that Jesus didn't resurrect physically, he just resurrected spiritually. He's not physically alive, but he's alive in my heart. Okay, well, now we begin to see the eyewitness accounts mean something, doesn't it? And the first eyewitness we see was a woman. John 20, verse 1 says, early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb. Now watch this. The first person to pay their respects to Jesus was a woman. This honors both Jesus and women. Why? It's important to understand this because this is a very important to understand the validity of the resurrection. Why? Because in Jesus' culture, a woman does not have the same legal standing as a man in court. When she's testifying, they're like, okay, it's not the same thing as a man. So if the resurrection of Jesus were a fabrication and not a fact, they would have not said the first witness to Jesus' resurrection was a woman. You know why? Because it doesn't provide the strongest legal standing. All right? If we want to create a false narrative, we want to do it in the strongest way possible. So who's the next witness? The guy writing the story, the guy by the name of John. When John writes this, he's 90 years old, all right? And here's the thing, even the people that didn't believe like John believed or believed anything that he preached, they would all tell you this guy's a good guy. He was a good man. He was charitable to the poor. He has high integrity and impeccable character. He had a proven track record over a very long period of time. So John is also a witness to Jesus while he's on the cross. Why is this important? Because it keeps getting better. The foolishness of this world to make up more stuff. One of the things that they say is that Jesus had a stunt double. That right before Jesus was crucified, there's somebody that looked just like him switched places with him. All right? There are some pretty significant holes in this particular account. Why? First off, there's no record of it. And then secondly, the eyewitnesses of Jesus' account was one of Jesus's closest disciples, Jesus' aunt, and Jesus' mama. All right? Why is that important to say? Because you can fool some of the people some of the time and all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool your mama none of the time. Some of us would say, I've been trying for 45 years to fool my mama. It ain't happened yet. Keep trying. It ain't. You're going to keep on failing, all right? My mom can look at me and say, what's the matter with you? Are you sick? And I'm like, no. You're not feeling good. I can tell it in your eyes. And about 10 minutes later, I'm like, oh my God, I feel awful. I'm like, this woman knows me, all right? So here's what we got to understand. Not only is it the three incredibly credible witnesses, but after the resurrection, Jesus hung out on the earth realm for 40 days and witnessed to over 500 different people. You know what I like so much about the story of Jesus? Jesus, by his actions, was a little bit of a smack talker. What does that mean? After he gets raised from the dead, he don't go into heaven like he's running from the devil. He said, I'm going to hang out with my people for a little while. Over 500 different people said, I saw him after he was raised from the dead. All right? And here's the next thing that we see. The stone was removed. Some of you are like, okay, anybody can roll away a stone. Really? It says in John chapter 20, said, and they saw that the stone had been removed from the instance. Why is this evidence? Well, some people say, anybody could have moved a stone. No, not so. Because this is now a legal matter. It's not some private matter like most burials. This is now a state matter. The Roman government executed Jesus, released the body of Jesus, knew the location of where the body was placed, put their seal on the stone, and put a guard in front of it. It was a huge deal for that stone to be moved. The seal broken and the guard gone. You know why? Because that's 3 different crimes committed at once, and there's no report of it. Well, some of us would say, okay, so maybe somebody got bought off. You got to understand, when you study history, Roman soldiers' discipline is legendary. Their whole philosophy was kind of like, the Marines. We follow orders or people die. And and by people, we're talking about like, you gonna die, we ain't gonna die. All right, we will kill you, and then after we kill you, we'll go eat dinner. We ain't gonna think nothing about it. All right? Here's where we got to understand. This is a huge deal, because look at the reaction on the next verse. It said this. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one that Jesus loved, and said, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they've put him. So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. Don't y'all think it's kind of funny that John talks about the fact that he outran Peter? I'm like, okay, so, I mean, you're faster than him. Well, he was also younger than him. How many of y'all like me, like I'm 45 and I feel 70? If I drop something, it better be valuable for me to pick it up. I'm like, oh no, partner, that's a long way down there. I don't know. The other day I'm playing golf, and man, my back's starting to hurt, my hips starting to hurt, and I hit one into the sand. Anybody that has played golf with me, and they're like, okay, that ain't no mystery. But I look down there, and man, it's like the 17th hole, and I looked, there's a brand new ball, and I was like, golly, I want to climb down there and get that darn thing, and then I'm going to have to walk back up, and my hamstring going to be tight. Screw it. I left that ball in there. There's a brand new ball over there, too. I could have cared less. It could have been $20. I was like, it hurts too much. Now, here's the thing that we got to understand. What do they see when they get there? They see another piece of evidence, and get ready to laugh, okay? They see that the grave clothes are not stolen. Well, why is that significant? Look at verse 5. It says this. He bent over and looked in the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. This is John. And then Simon Peter came along behind it and went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in. He saw and he believed this. They still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Okay, so Peter goes in, sees the burial cloths, the faith cloths, and the head cloths, and this is the first of several miracles, all right? What's the first miracle, PC? That a man actually folded something. All right? Guys, you want to be like Jesus? Fold some stuff around your house. Come on, women. I was expecting a little bitty amen on that one. I just live for this cheap applause. Teenagers, you want to be resurrected before you go to school in the morning? Make your bed. Jesus, not only did he fold his stuff, he made his bed. All right? So anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. But here's the thing. Why do we mention grave clothes? Because grave clothes are valuable. And if a grave robber breaks in, They want possessions more than they want a body. They're like, well, I don't want to carry on some stinking corpse. They're like them folks that was looking for the Mobile leprechaun. They're like, I want to go, baby. You'll be able to see this, here's what we see, that 2 days before, what did the Roman guards do? They gambled for Jesus' clothing. Everything was valuable. But we see here, watch this. What is of value gets left behind. Doesn't make sense, all right? And here's the thing, because I mentioned this, because the religious leaders of Jesus, they said, hey, look, they pay everybody off, and they said, we're going to tell everybody that somebody broke in and stole the body, all right? Not only was this an impossibility because this is a state matter, and look, they ain't gonna mess with Rome, but there's simply no evidence that somebody broke in. But there is significant evidence, however, that somebody broke out. We can't argue with this. Here's one major thing that some people forget, all right? That if some body was stolen, we still not address one teeny tiny issue. How did the dead guy come back to life? All right, look, say whatever you want to, but somebody's got to answer for the dead guy who's cooking breakfast for people and preaching to over 500 people. All right? There's still a dead guy that came back to life. And look, for those of us that are in the recovery movement, this is my favorite of all the alternative theories, all right? One alternative theory is called the hallucination theory, all right? Some of y'all like, man, I'm familiar with hallucination. They said that all of the disciples were so distraught at Jesus' death that they all hallucinated and said that they saw Jesus and spoke with Jesus. All right, now, I've been sober for 25 years by the grace of God. All right? So they all hallucinated the same thing? Guys, this didn't even happen at stinking Woodstock, all right? And although it's been 25 years since I messed around with that stuff, if memory serves correct, aren't hallucinations still a personal thing? Where, you know, if you're at a Grateful Dead concert, you look at your friends like, do you see the purple kangaroo over there? No, I see something else. I see a camel over there. Okay. Nobody sees the same thing, do they? Oh, come on, y'all know that's funny. Especially some of y'all that used to mess around with them mushrooms and stuff like that, all them psychedelics. Y'all, I ain't pointing my finger at you. I got 4 pointed right back at me. All right. So anyway, even if everybody is higher than Sputnik, we don't see the same thing. So here's now, we talked all the stuff on the scriptures. For those of us that may be a little bit skeptical, let's land the plane here and let's wrap it up with all the historical and circumstantial evidence. All right? Because some arguments against the resurrection say there's no evidence outside the Bible for the resurrection. Here's the thing. They can't doubt the evidence, but they doubt the source of the evidence. And the times whenever I've been in discussion with people, I love to kind of, this is where I start getting sarcastic. Where they're like, man, you can't really trust the Bible. Oh, really? Oh, okay. So this book that has stood for over 2,000 years is filled with thousands of fulfilled prophecies and have outlived its critics. It's not a good enough source, is it? All right? Even though archaeology always catches up with what the Bible says, it's still not a credible source, is it? All right? So let's look at the historical evidence. Right after the church gets established, here's what's so cool, is that Christianity is spreading so rapidly. The Roman government hires a guy because they're like, why is this quasi-Jewish group growing so rapidly? All right, so they said, hey, look, they grab a guy, his name's Josephus. They said, we want you to go and study him, and we're going to pay you for your observations. And today, as you leave, as our gift to you, our ushers are going to give you this. This is a summary of Josephus' findings. It is awesome, all right? And you're going to love it. If you want to put it on your refrigerator, you can do that to remind you. I would encourage you to put it at work where you can share with people, hey, man, this is what I learned about Jesus. This is really true, all right? So here, let me give you the Gulf Coast edited version of this, all right? Josephus summarizes it like this. All right, dude, there's a group of Christians, all because of a dude named Jesus Christ. The leaders killed him, but he came back to life. They are really excited about it, and they still are today. That's the summary, all right? So, and by the way, here's what's one of the things that I always like to throw out on some historical evidence. Although they knew 2,000 years ago where Jesus was buried, they don't know where he's buried today. Y'all ever been over to Israel? One of the first things that Christians get off the plane, they'll grab their tour and like, take me first to the grave of Jesus. And they're like, we'd love to charge you $100 a head. We don't know where it is. Why is this popular? When people die in culture, like popular people die in culture, we have a tendency to enshrine them, don't we? Let me ask you this. Where's Elvis buried? Graceland, baby. Man, they got a picture of me at the house. Man, I'm about 5 years old. I'm like, right there in front of the tomb. I was like, that's pretty disrespectful, like that. But hey, I'm 5. What are you going to do? But anyway, for all of my rockumentarians in here, Scott Hunter, I'm looking at you. Where's Jimi Hendrix buried? Seattle. Golly, the only people that answered me on that one was in the last service. All right. Where's JFK buried? Arlington. Why do I tell you that? It's important because in Jesus' day, there were more than 50 different religious leaders who had enshrined tombs, and their followers went there regularly. If we knew where Jesus was buried, Israel would be making millions upon millions more dollars in tourism dollars. But nobody knows. No archaeologist knows. Do you know why they don't know? Look at me. I want to see the whites of your eyes when I tell you this. You know why they don't know? Because he isn't there. That's the reason why. If you and I study the 4 major world religions that are founded by a person and not an ideology, all but one of the 4 major religions, we know where they're buried. Abraham is buried in Hebron. All right, him right next to his wife over in Machpella's cave. They can take you right there. You'll see it on a tour to Israel. All right, you want to go visit the Buddha's grave? He's buried in India. There'll be hundreds that'll go there today, tomorrow, and is a very popular attraction. Muhammad, where's he buried? Buried in Medina. There's only one world religion leader who doesn't have an enshrined tomb, and that makes him superior to everybody else because he defeated death, and death defeated all the rest of them. So before we leave today, so we've talked historical, we've talked scriptural. Now let's talk some circumstantial evidence, and we're almost done. Let me ask you this. If there was no resurrection, how did the disciples go from being fearful to being fearless? Does that make any sense? Peter, the most outspoken and bold, he's the guy that he's going to say something stupid. The night Jesus is arrested, Peter can't even admit to a 12-year-old girl that he knows who Jesus is. But 50 days later, the man preaches to the exact same crowd, mind you, that killed Jesus. He goes to everybody and says, let me tell you something. We killed the Messiah, and you know what? God raised him from the dead, and he wants to forgive all of us. And if you want to kill me, kill me. Can I let you know? What was the threat that followed the early church constantly? They're like, if you don't stop talking about this guy, Jesus, we're going to kill you. You know what all the disciples would say? Sweet, upgrade. I get to go see Jesus sooner. Can I let you know? You and I, we don't have a lot of boldness in our faith because we're not persecuted like they are in other countries. Can I tell you what the fastest growing Christian movement in the world is right now? It's the nation of Iran. Some of you are like, I remember talking with one guy and say, hey man, can you talk about Jesus there? And they're like, we can talk about anything we're willing to die for. And said, so we talk about Jesus all the time. If they kill us, they kill us. Do you know what the motto of the Church of Iran is? It's this: the last man to the last breath. Where did they get this type of boldness from? Where did the early church get this type of boldness from? It's because their heart changed. They became fearless because they saw their leader conquer death, so death no longer scared them. The next question we got to ask is, why did they start worshiping on Sunday? Jewish people, man, let me tell you something. Tradition. Come on, y'all watch Fiddler on the Roof. It's tradition, watch this. Saturday is their Sabbath, all right? It is sacred. If you ask anybody that goes over to Israel on a regular basis, whenever you go stay in a hotel in Israel, there's 2 different elevators. There's one for the Gentiles, there's one for the Jews. And the only day that the Jews will ride the Gentile elevator is on Saturday, because they think that if you push a button, you will have made electricity and you will have worked on the Sabbath. They say that's a sin. So they'll get on the Gentile elevator and they're like, hey dude, push button number 11. And they're like, why? He's like, yeah, I can't do that. It's a sin for me. And like, why you let me do it? And they're like, you know where you're going. You're going to hell anyway. Go ahead. But so I made a stop on every floor there. Here's the thing. I was talking with our Messianic Jewish pastor that's on the Eastern Shore. He's a buddy of mine, Rabbi David Tokajer. And Rabbi David, I texted him not too long ago, and I said, hey, Rabbi David, what's the only thing that can change a Jewish calendar? And he goes, what? I said, a resurrection. Because those guys, one of the main reasons why Rome wanted Josephus to go there, like, okay, why are all these Jews going to church at 6 in the morning on a Monday before they go into work? I thought they were used to work on worship on Sunday. What is going on with these crazy guys? All right. The final thing I want to talk about is why they celebrate communion and water baptism. If the resurrection wasn't true, communion is when we remember his death. Water baptism, like we've been seeing in all of our services, is this one and a couple of more. Okay, how in the world do they explain this if Jesus is still dead? Doesn't make sense, does it? Can I let you know something? If you're a Christ follower today and you're like, man, I just kind of always kind of wondered, how can I defend this? Let me let you know something, brother and sister in the Lord. Brand new Christian that may be serving Jesus for the last couple of weeks. When it comes to criticisms of the resurrection, the burden of proof falls on the skeptic, not the believer. It takes far more faith to receive and believe the alternative theories than it does the real one. Can I ask you really quick? Some of us would say, okay, I want to make sure that you know something. Any other argument is incredibly weak because Jesus' evidence towers above all of them. So why are Christians celebrating all over the world today? It's quite easy. Because Jesus Christ is the most important person that ever walked on the planet, and his resurrection was the most significant event in the history of the world. Why do you care about what the skeptics say, PC? Because I'm a follower of Jesus and you're a follower of Jesus. One day we're all going to die and we're going to stand before Jesus. And if you're a skeptic, we want you to stand before Jesus with us. Some of us today, maybe you'd say, well, I'd probably become a Christ follower, but man, I've had a whole lot of church people let me down. Hey, join the club. All right? Can I just make sure, if y'all are kind of like checking us out, this is my first visit, I wonder what Coastal's all about. Let me go ahead and take the mystery out of it if you just examine this partner, all right? Your chances of getting hurt at Coastal Church are 100%. I'm just taking mystery out of it. You know why? Because Coastal Church is full of people. We're not perfect. Now, we're being perfected, and every day we make some progress, but you know what? Some of us, including the preacher, we step out in the flesh and we say something stupid every now and then. Come on, some of y'all got your redneck proclivities just like I do, all right? But here's the thing. I'm not talking to you about Christianity. I'm talking to you about Christ. The most important question that you and I will ever answer while we walk this planet is, what will you do with Jesus? I understand you may be hurting. I understand that some of us today, you think you have screwed up too much for Jesus to ever forgive you. No. Today you're here not by coincidence. You're here because of a divine appointment with God. All of your whole life has led to this moment right here. Two greatest days in your life is the day you were born and the day you realize why you were born. You were born to be recreated with Jesus. You were born to fulfill the destiny and plan of God that he has for you while you're on this planet. And then after your mission is done and you die, you spend the rest of eternity with Jesus. This is the plan of God. The evidence is before each and every one of us, and the decision is ours. Would you stand to your feet and let's pray? So, Father, I thank you again for another opportunity I've had to share your word with people I just love and respect so much. And I just pray that today, my brothers and sisters who have been discouraged and they would say, I don't have an argument. Lord, may we leave firm in our faith, knowing who you are and what you've done. We stand in that. We trust you, Lord, like never before. Help us to be witnesses. Help us to share what we know and give other people the opportunity to respond. We love you and we thank you in Jesus' name.